When Nancy was walking towards her car in the parking lot from Madhu's home, a man came from behind and stabbed her from the back near her car. Her blood started flowing instantly on the floor from her back. She saw the face of the man by turning back. He was wearing a mask, but his shirt had a logo which was seen by Nancy as well as by the driver of Nancy, who stood a few feet away from her. The driver ran to save Nancy instantly, and the hitman ran to his car and drove it out of the parking lot hurriedly. The driver called 911 and took Nancy instantly to the hospital. When Nancy was walking towards her car in the parking lot from Madhu's home, a man came from behind and stabbed her from the back near her car. Her blood started flowing instantly on the floor from her back. She saw the face of the man by turning back. He was wearing a mask, but his shirt had a logo which was seen by Nancy as well as by the driver of Nancy, who stood a few feet away from her. The driver ran to save Nancy instantly, and the hitman ran to his car and drove it out of the parking lot hurriedly. The driver called 911 and took Nancy instantly to the hospital. When Nancy was walking towards her car in the parking lot from Madhu's home, a man came from behind and stabbed her from the back near her car. Her blood started flowing instantly on the floor from her back. She saw the face of the man by turning back. He was wearing a mask, but his shirt had a logo which was seen by Nancy as well as by the driver of Nancy, who stood a few feet away from her. The driver ran to save Nancy instantly, and the hitman ran to his car and drove it out of the parking lot hurriedly. The driver called 911 and took Nancy instantly to the hospital. Bree and Madhu were intimate in passionately loving each other, and suddenly Bree's phone rang. Madhu asked her to take the call, but Bree was so much involved in loving her beloved wife that she ignored the call. Madhu held her face in her hands, widening her eyes, whispering, "Answer the call. It might be important." Moaning, Bree looked at her saying, "No, let it be and you come here." She pulled her to kiss her. Madhu held her hand on Bree's mouth and looked at the phone. "Go, take it," she softly said, smiling at her. Bree stared at her in fake anger, pulled her sweatshirt and got up from the couch wearing it, staring at Madhu, and answered the call without looking at the phone. Madhu sat on the couch and wore her t-shirt, biting her lips and smiling and staring at Bree. "Madam, Mrs. Miller is stabbed by someone down in the parking lot. I called 911 and the ambulance is arriving anytime," the driver said from the other side. "What?" Bree was shocked to hear that. Madhu got scared looking at the expressions of Bree. She came to her and held her hand, gesturing what happened. Bree nodded and asked the driver, "Where are you now?" "We are down in the parking lot of your building," he said. "Okay, I'm coming down," saying Bree disconnected the call. Madhu asked her what happened. Bree hurriedly said, "I will tell you. Let's go in the parking lot now," saying she took her and Madhu's jackets from the rack. They both took the handbags and mobiles and rushed down. Bree told Madhu everything in the lift. By the time they ran to Nancy, the ambulance was standing near her and the health workers were slowly placing injured, unconscious Nancy on the stretcher. People surrounded the ambulance in the parking lot. Bree rushed to her mother but didn't touch her, as per the guidelines of health workers. Bree shocked looking at her mother's blood-shredded body and took fast breaths. Tears filled in her eyes. Madhu was shocked looking at Nancy and she held one hand on her mouth and the other on the shoulder of Bree. They both were shaking. Police were talking to the driver and took his statement on the spot. The driver told everything to Bree as well after that. Everyone went to the hospital from there. Soon, Johnsons also rushed to the hospital. Police interrogated everyone from the family. After their investigation on checking the CCTV and the statements of the driver, they came to know that the man who stabbed Nancy was wearing the security agency shirt which had a logo on it. It was getting dark. Bree and Madhu stayed in the night at the hospital. Bree asked Madhu to go back home, but Madhu didn't listen to her and stayed back with her. Betty came later in the night and she told both of them to go back home and she would spend the night in the hospital. But Bree didn't agree with that and stayed there. At midnight, Nancy's surgery got completed, but she had wounds in her back and intestine, which needed time to heal. Nancy also had a minor heart attack in that panic, for which the doctors treated her. Morning, doctors told that Nancy's condition was better, but she was still in ICU and she might get consciousness late. Bree and Madhu were awake in the whole night. Hearing the doctor, they went to the cafeteria of the hospital to get some refreshments. Betty also joined them. Meanwhile, Glenn came to the hospital and he waited near the door of Nancy's room. Noticing there was no one around to check, he had a talk with his son Tom on the phone. In the cafeteria, police came and asked Bree to go with them for some kind of private investigation. All three of them wondered what was pending now. Bree asked Madhu to go to her home as she had to catch the flight that night. And she asked Betty to stay back with Nancy and keep her informed about her condition after getting consciousness. Madhu denied going back home and said she will go along with her. But the cops said Bree needs to go alone. Bree gestured to Madhu to go back home, but Madhu didn't listen to her and said she will stay back in the hospital until she comes back. In the bureau, police officers gave shocking news to Bree. They showed the logo on the shirt of the stabber who hit her mother and informed her it was the logo of the same security agency from which Bree hired a security guard a few days back for the safety of Madhu. They had also asked her that she had a bad relationship with her mother due to her wedding in recently, as per the statements of Johnson's. With their investigation, Bree made out that they were suspecting her in the attempt to murder case of her mother. She asked upfront what do they mean by all that, and they made their point as she doubted. Bree called her lawyer at the police station. One by one, 3 police officers interrogated Bree before her lawyer and took her statement. Her lawyer made valid points. He asked the police if Bree had planned the murder of her mother, which she did not, then she wouldn't have arranged the person who wore the same uniform as the security agency which she hired. Apart from that, the security agency has confirmed that the stabber's uniform has a slight difference from the original company uniform. With many such valid points, the lawyer and Bree convinced police that she is innocent, and it was a game plan of someone else to murder Nancy and send Bree to jail in her murder case. The lawyer also told police that to check with Johnson's first and don't push his client Bree into troubles, as if the plan of the murder of Nancy would have been successful, then benefit of all that would have gone only to Johnson's. Police released Bree and asked her not to go anywhere until the investigation is finished. Bree nodded at that with a broken heart, as she had booked the tickets to India. Distressed Bree came to the hospital. Nancy didn't get consciousness yet and she was still in ICU. Madhu rushed to Bree when she came and asked her the reason for the delay and no calls. Bree sat on the chair in the corridor of the hospital with no answer to her beloved wife. The lawyer had come along with Bree, and he explained everything that happened in the police station. Madhu was shocked hearing all that, and she sat with Bree holding her hand. She got annoyed at Johnson's for planning all this to trap Bree. She rubbed her hand, thinking how upset and stressed she might have been after all that happened to her. After the silence of few minutes, Bree asked Madhu to go back home and take some rest, as she had a flight to catch that night. But Madhu didn't leave Bree even for a second. Till evening, they sat together. In the evening, Madhu said, "I will postpone my tickets." Bree got shocked hearing that. "What? Are you kidding?" "No way. You have a big ceremony at home. Everyone's waiting for you desperately over there," Bree replied. "But you need me now. Your mom is injured, and I cannot leave you both alone in this situation and go to enjoy the wedding of my brother," Madhu said sadly, holding her hand. "I am fine. Mom is also gonna be fine. Look at me," held her face. "I can handle everything here. You go happily. Don't think too much. Everything is under control here. Don't ruin your trip for this small issue. You have some small packing pending. Go home and finish all that. I will come to pick you up and drop you at the airport in the night," Bree said, boosting her morale. I should be boosting your morale in this situation, and you are doing it to me, Madhu said, looking at her with a pale face. You thought this much? That is more than enough for me, babe. Bree kissed her forehead and paused. Moreover, these legal things might solve in a couple of days or might take longer than that. It all depends on Mom's statement when she wakes up from her long sleep. It is better you leave for India now for your safety, as I don't want these cops to drag you into anything simply because you are my wife. Bree made a valid point. I'm not worried about that. I just want to be with you. My heart is not letting me go by leaving you in this situation alone, Madhu said stubbornly. Madhu, no more words. You must leave for India tonight. Go, pack your things, Bree ordered. No, I can't leave you like this, Madhu said, tears filled in her eyes. Bree held her hand and took her along with her. Charlie was waiting near the hospital parking lot in his car. She asked Charlie to drive to Madhu's home. Immediately after going inside her house, Bree started packing all the small things which were pending. Madhu held her hand and requested her not to force her to go to India. Bree hugged her instantly and cried like a baby. All her pain came out. On one side, she had to see off her beloved wife for a few weeks, and on another side, her mother was on the deathbed and the police were suspecting her in that. Madhu knew she was in pain since the last day and trying to stay strong. She also cried looking at the pain of Bree. Madhu kissed her forehead and cheeks again and again, caressing her hand and rubbing her back. She let her cry so that her pain subsides. After a few minutes, Bree got up and went to the washroom. When she got fresh, Madhu came before her. I will go back to the hospital. You get ready. I will come and pick you up in the night, Bree said, looking down. Madhu hugged her tightly, and after a minute, she kissed her. Bree also kissed her, and after a couple of seconds, she pushed her and went out of the house. Madhu understood her situation, and she didn't drag that matter much and thought of something. She got fresh and went to the supermarket where she shopped every time. That supermarket was owned by Hazel Johnson. Yes, the youngest Johnson. Months ago, when Madhu first went to Bree's home, Hazel had come there for a weekend to meet her family. Madhu got surprised to meet Hazel over there as she met her many times in her supermarket. Although Bree rarely spoke to Hazel, but Hazel spoke to Madhu nicely whenever she met her. Madhu always felt she was pretty friendly and different from other Johnsons. So, she thought of taking the help of Hazel to save the Millers. Madhu narrated the entire story to Hazel. As expected, she got shocked hearing everything from Madhu, since no Johnson had told her the story. Hazel understood everything, as she knew her family and assured Madhu not to worry about Bree or Nancy and asked her to go to India and enjoy her brother's wedding. Madhu got relieved with that, and she came back home and did her balance packing quickly as she had only an hour to leave. However, she wasn't feeling fine to leave Bree in trouble and go like that. She thought of cancelling the trip once again, and in the meanwhile, Bree called. I will be coming on time to pick you up, she asked Madhu when she said hello. Bree, I was thinking once again, I'm not feeling like... Before Madhu completes a sentence, Bree interrupted in the middle saying, Don't you think that. I am coming to pick you up. But Bree, she was saying, but Bree again interrupted. Madhu, it is painful for me as well to send you like this. But I want you to go back since I don't want any troubles for you here. Their love and care for each other was so much that both of them could feel the pain of each other, where one was ready to sacrifice the closeness since she didn't wish to trouble her, and the other was ready to sacrifice the meeting her family as she didn't wish to leave her love alone in trouble. They reasoned for minutes over the phone, and Bree won the debate and Madhu agreed to go to India. Within an hour, Madhu got ready and all set to go. Bree came along with Charlie and they all took her bags and locked her home. Madhu gave one set of keys of her house to Bree while leaving from home. While on the way, Madhu held the hand of Bree and leaned her head on the shoulder of Bree. It was hard and painful for her to see off Bree. Already she was upset about that from weeks, and now when she was in trouble, she had no heart to leave her. Bree leaned her head on Madhu's shoulder. Pain filled all over her heart to see off Madhu. Bree had planned to surprise Madhu by going to India, but now due to her mother's hospitalization and police investigation, she could not go to India. Whatever she thought, all went in ashes. They didn't speak throughout the way. When Madhu was leaving at the airport, Bree hugged her. "You will be back, right?" she asked, softly, choking. Madhu hugged tightly, crying, and kissed her cheeks again and again, saying, "Of course, my munchkin. I can't imagine a single day without you. These 20 days will pass like years for me." Bree smiled, wiping her tears. "Babes, I never imagined it would be this hard to say bye to you. You know why? You are the only best thing that happened in my life." Saying, Bree choked. Madhu hugged her again. In the meantime, the airport announcement started and she had to leave for boarding. She went a few steps ahead and turned back to say bye to Bree, who was standing alone, waving at her and full of pain. Madhu ran to her and hugged her tightly again and cried, whispering, "I can't go." Bree smiled and calmed her down and rubbed her back and said, "Shh, these days will also pass." Madhu wasn't leaving her. Bree held her face and kissed her. Madhu kissed her back, crying. Bree whispered, smiling at her, "Go, have a safe and happy journey. I will wait for your call," and pushed her to go back. Madhu left hard-hearted and turned and checked on Bree tens of times until she reached the boarding turn. Bree kept on smiling and waving at her. When she left, pain-filled Bree walked to her car fastly. She told Charlie to leave her alone inside the car for a few minutes. Obeying her order, Charlie got down from the car and stood a few steps away. Bree shouted aloud inside the soundproof Mercedes and cried aloud to take out all the pain she hid. On the other side, Madhu also cried by hiding in the bathroom of the plane.